Welcome to this episode of Prairie People's Poetry, a spotlight series highlighting Saskatchewan spoken word artists through performances and conversations on the craft and community of the art form. I'm your host, Cat Abenstein, and today we're talking to interdisciplinary poet Peace Akintade.
Well, my name is Peace Akintade. Full name is Oluwaseun Peace Akintade Oluwabeye Pelumi. If you put it all together, it means thank you, peaceful warrior. And I am a African Canadian interdisciplinary poet.
So, Peace, how do you describe your spoken word?
I like to describe it as a very narrative description. All of my poems have common themes, and it's not copying from both poems, but it's like an overlapping story. And that story could be childhood memories or childhood fables, morals that I've kind of learned, advice to myself. It's a beautiful form of future self kind of journals. So I like to think of my spoken word as soft, descriptive, and those kinds that you have to listen to multiple times because the meanings will always be different for other people.
So what does your writing process look like?
It's very messy.
Yeah.
It's messy because it comes in flashes. Most of the time, I could be walking, or I could be sleeping, or in the shower, and a word or a line pops up that I really like, and I can't get it off my mind. So I write it down, and then months will go by where I don't think about that line anymore. And then I have that sudden creative surge, but I do not know what to write about. So I would go back to that journal of one-liners, and I'll take that one-liner and put it on the top of the page and try to reminisce of what that line means to me, what it meant to me in the past, what it means to me now in the present. And from there, the rest of it just completely flows. I like to have morals or what the end goal, what the idea has to be, and write it beside it. And that kind of guides me towards where it goes. The descriptive work that comes into the phrases or the metaphors or the similes have to do with just me using my five senses, if that makes sense. I will have an idea like karma, for example, and I'll be like, what do I think karma will smell like? What do I think it will look like? What does it feel like? What do I know already? And for me, karma just manifested itself into like a river goddess that always dresses in yellow for some reason. And it became a poem and became a thing. This is called Monologue of a Burnt Out Artist. It's the claustrophobic mastermind screaming in my ears. It's the Black Panthers fist fighters asking for my head. It's the gun sounds and 6 a.m. whispers by the bed. It's lo-fi music playing, asking if I'm still here. It's staying in my room, starfished and bare, counting the ceiling stars while my head sticks to the fear, counting the ticking clocks knowing they wish for my dread. It's as if the world recognized my trauma. I would be someone worth listening to my mother and siblings. My shadow will keep you company. I have no more of myself to give, but I am young, I'm happy, I'm fulfilled, and we still have so much of life to give. What am I running towards? What am I running towards? What am I running from? I'm running from the pressure. To societal force that says immigrants must work harder for the opportunities made by their oppressor. I'm running from the fighting, the pestering, the unspoken treaties, the evolutionary thinking that my work is my worth, the unfallible torture that influenced my vision. Everyone has a gift to share and my basket is written. Why demonize my passion at 10? I've already sold my soul to the Lord. Why demonize my passion? The first advice my mother ever told me was to hold the comb as you would a knife. an extension of your heritage dipped in lizard blood and coconut oil. There's a reason we do not distribute our roots. Each pool of our hair symbolizes a cry, and messy buns made from Afrobites are big enough to chew slowly. Ancestors, I have ascended my natural state. I have seen my future self and cried that butter taste. And it's a messed up mastermind that guilts my process. It's a buffer solution to all the injustice. It's carrying the world as if others will notice. Have you noticed the way my people dance backwards towards music? One feet intertwined with another, coddling the trauma, hoping it would listen. And they tell me my descriptions remind them of love. So I tell the story of the woman and the bear, the blind lady, the fox, tortoise, and dog. And they say my fables are demonic. Our lizard blood tastes too much like honey, while they pay for my advice and story, not knowing each tale comes with a warning. Mr. Businessman making tokens of our culture, forgot earth resembles our color. Ancestors, why does my head stay too close to the pillow? And to complain is to lose gratitude. Ancestors, what am I running towards? What am I running towards? What am I running from? Lord, is my soul enough? It's the claustrophobic mastermind screaming in my ears. It's the restless time lords asking for a share of our sheltered heart crafted by debt. It's never learning boundaries and the fear of rejection. It's tokenism mixed with imposter syndrome. For the ocean, for being a second choice, for my breath tastes too much like ashes. Too bad no one loved the taste of earth. For the sea, for the feeling of rejection, flowing over my scarred calves, never spreading enough to my heart. For the trees, I miss our quick conversations, texting each other bittersweet confessions. For the sand, for the way it grounds me firmly, for holding all my secrets, the past, present. For my family, who deserve more than I give them. What is the price of wisdom? My art becomes my own. We are young, we are free. I still have so much of the world to see. Let it go, let it go, let it go.
Do poems ever visit you?
Multiple times. Multiple times. That's why I always say that being a poet like myself is never a resting issue, because of even when I am sleeping or trying to sleep, phrases will just pop up. And it's always like there's a moment before you actually start sleeping where your mind is just roaming around, like, and I know that it's coming because I always envision myself on stage saying this word. And I know I'm lying on bed, but I feel like I'm on stage. And that word just keeps on popping up over and over and over. And I'll try to think of something else, but it pops over and over and over. And it always happens in the night. And I know, and I have to push myself with a groan and go and get my journal and go write it down. Because I know it's going to bother me a bunch of times. So those instances when the poem visits me in stillness. It visits me in stillness, like when you're sleeping, when you don't have to go through busy life and go through all of this work and you're just standing there. That's when it visits.
So does writing energize or exhaust you?
Both. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. It's one thing to write about advice and morals and happy times, but sometimes when the poem visits me, it's violent and it's intrusive and it's just filled with so much memories that I want to forget. But I know that I have to write it or I'm not going to stop thinking about it. So it's mostly reliving that moment over and over and over again. So on those kind of days, it's very exhausting. But writing is the only way that I can get it out. The days when it's energizing is when I've been trying to think of this word for a long time, but I can't find a way to get it all on paper in a way that is digestible. And then one day I just sit down and it all just flows. And that's when I'm like, that's the magic. That's what it's about. That's what I'm trying to get out of this, you know. But the days when I have to sit down and I have written and I finished it and I read over it, I'm just like, wow, okay, so this is there. How am I going to turn this into a healing moment and not just trauma dump, you know? And it's just a really weird balance, and it's about taking care of yourself, and it's about finding writing in a form of self-love and another form of self-hatred. I try very hard to make sure that I am not just trauma dumping into my paper, that I'm making it energizing. And even if it started in exhaustion, how can I turn that around? How can I change that perspective, you know?
So that's interesting. When you're thinking about like not trying to trauma dump, which is difficult when you're writing as a form of healing, how do you take care of your audience?
I like to think of it like a roller coaster, you know? They always have the high and then you go really fast in the low, but there's always that section in the end where you're just in a slow build up, you know, to the end. And that's what I like to do. Using like voice intonations, for example, there'll be parts in my poem where it's very intense, and then I'll try to bring it back into that slow, soothing voice. You know, it's very important because humans are mimicking creatures, you know. When someone is yelling and someone is high-strung, you're going to feel high-strung. And even if their words is not necessarily trauma dumping, you're still going to feel like, oh my gosh, I need to be tense. So when you have that moment of just softness and stillness and just allowing the words to speak for itself, and the words are saying that I have gone through this, but I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm here. You know, I am a living survivor, you know? And that kind of moment with audiences is so important. I know so many times that I have gone to spoken word slams or open mics, and someone comes and just yells and pounds, and they just leave. And I am stuck there with that sensation in there, and I do not know how to get it out. So I still have to sit there for the whole next hour while someone else is doing their work, you know. So I try to advise and I try to advocate that whenever there is that moment, there needs to also be a moment of stillness. Even if it's just you, that you have finished your poem and you just stand there for a moment, so that the audience know that this is reality right now. The person that just went through there is still here, and they're still with me, and I am here, and I am tangible, and I can see you, I can hear you. That kind of sense of bonding is so important, mostly in the poetry community, mostly in spoken word community. It's so important. This is called Holy Man. If I ever fall on my knees to worship my prisoner, rename me as holy. Holy is the name of my villain, whose more trigger words and self-denial, whose more Christian music played on a loop to drown out my siblings' cries. I pray, like washing my hands in a well of sin. I pray, like destroying past lovers and misguided friendship. Teach me, trauma, how you grip me so willingly. I remember sitting on the brick road listening to the radio station say, heroes are always winning. Well, if heroes are always winning, then I want to win with an iron fist. I see God in the mirror, living underneath an inscription of self-hatred, mad for destructive knowledge. Like when we look at the burning embers of the city, let us laugh and rejoice at our victory. When the wind is falling apart and the sun begins to fail, when the earth spits us out, you will still be here. You, more villain than monster. You, more urban day witchcraft than crystal demons summoning, and me wishing to be a protagonist, a hero, that when I look at the mirror, I see a creation, a specimen deserving of victory, the answer to someone's prayer, the gold webbing through cracked pottery, slowly sinking through the cracks like she belongs there. But when I look at the mirror, I see a human. She looks more like a stress consumer than heavily bodied. But my reflection will show power. My starvation holds me tightly for inspiration. My inspiration are shackles I carry on my shoulder, bracing myself for the divine whip of trauma. Let us all, as a congregation, repent our desires for a better world. Let us make the chairs our goddesses and incompetent fools our rulers. Our regret shall be omnipotent because we are humans, humans more obsessed than fair, humans more unfinished journals than self-discovery, but humans more gullible and lovable, humans who carry their shackles and attach it to themselves, not to the wall, nor the rocks, not attached to our livestock, but you carry your shackles on your shoulder. And I wonder if we fell in love with our prisoner, and if we realize poison does not make us gods.
So, how can an audience take care of you?
Wow. An audience can take care by, first of all, consent is important. I mean, whenever we always speak about this, if you have a question about the poem, are you okay if I ask this question? And the poet will either say yes or they say no. That is super important. Another thing is always being respectful while the poet is on stage, and allowing that moment to sit, I understand that sometimes the poems can be a lot, they can be too much, but it's important that you project it into a safe direction and not project it into the person that is saying it, because I've had instances when I have talked about, when I was in middle school and all of the things that happened in middle school, being an immigrant and of course being kids, all the prejudice that comes with it. And people take it as a chance to share how they are not those middle school students, and sometimes it's great. I mean, it heals me to know that you're not a bad person, but also yeah, you're not a bad person. Good for you, pat on the back. And audience, friends, families, an important thing is that to separate the poem from the poets. That even though I am on stage trauma dumping to you, that's not my whole life. That if I talk about a mental illness that I have on stage, I'm doing it on stage because I feel like that's my safe space. When I am with you walking around or we're just talking normally, maybe that's not a safe space to start being like, hey, I heard that poem. You want to talk about this? So it's separating the poem from the poet. Once they get off stage, it's now in the ball for the poet to say whether I want to talk about this or not. It's an exchange of consent, and it's an exchange of knowing that there needs to be a separation, because, that's my life right now.
So, with your poetry, you don't just do poetry. Your thing is kind of mixing different art forms. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I've been in the position of learning about a lot of art forms because when I came to Canada, they had programs where they would teach immigrants, children and refugee children, different art forms in Saskatchewan so that you can find a community. The thing is that you're supposed to find one community and stay with them. I did not do that. I fell in love with all of them. I fell in love with poetry more than all of them, but more in the sense of why is there separation? Why do you have to just pick one? Because poetry can be found in so many different things. Like when I discovered lyrical and contemporary dance, it was over. It was over for me because it makes so much sense that something so descriptive, sometimes you need your body to be able to express that too. Then music came along with poetry and songwriting being also interjected. And I started working with musicians. I can't do an instrument and I can't sing, but I can bring that knowledge of poetry into songwriting and work with a musician, work with dancers, work with theater folks. Theater. Spoken word is monologues, spoken word is literally monologues and we're separating it. Why aren't theater folks coming in and bringing monologues on the poetry stage? That is an important fact, so then writing monologues for theater companies and bringing in sneaking in poetry elements, not just I am, it's more like I am. Taking in that poetry element and bringing it into a new form for theater is an important thing. When we put together poetry and music, we're not just doing poetry and music, we're making something new with that interaction, and it's so important that we do that art media and we try to mix it in with each other because we are not separate. Like we're literally a spider web of the art community. The art community is a spider web, and I never understood why dancers would be on this side and musicians on this side and poets on this side. So of course I tried to interject as much as I could, and I did. This poem is called Karma. Karma opened her mouth in awe of the African struggling to remove herself from quicksand, slowly reciting scriptures that mean nothing. Yet the woman wrapped every strand of her lover's hair to pull herself up, screaming and gasping for a symbol of hope. Mrs. Karma removed herself from her grasp, looks away with regret and anger, and among the vibrant lights of the world, the African finally understands what it means to prove one's existence, explaining why she deserves to fight, why she deserves to scream her rights to drywall. Fake sympathy never pulls her by the hand. The African sinks deeper into the quicksand. She sings for the entertainment of crying pro-black activists. Do they lend an arm? Do they know of the scrapes caused by praying on your knees? Do they know of the sons of karma, the daughters of circumstances, and casting cultivated curses on impressionable adults? Let them live, the karma goddess screams, laughing into the ears of empathic sinners. Close your ears, kids. Do not listen to the secrets of teachers teaching insensitive, violent humans. Do you think you know love? Know the footprints he leaves behind? You might try to fall gracefully into its outstretched hands, deeper, so you might blend into their arms, inhaling spices and cinnamon scent. You want to know love's voice, low and rumbling through their chest. All around you, their scent tickles your neck, the bubbling happiness of love. You only know happiness, my child. To say there is nothing in life is to drink hot chocolate from a wine glass. How fickle the human mind is. To ignore the simple passions buried in our mind, to succumb to the drunken state of empathy, to lose the privilege of being a child. Close your ears, children. Do not listen to the laughter in the distance. Karma parades in yellow and swirls rainbows into your mind. You only know happiness, my child, but can you forgive the spite behind love? I wonder if oceans ever get tired of sinking ships. I wonder if tears dream of being puddles. And if I can ever love the storm, if I knew it was the sea asking for help, the African knows that we were born without a second look and tossed into the quicksand of our color. To my fellow fighter, watch as karma stands agape, wondering how you can be so strong. Let us plan for the still tension to fall, breathe, for the world might look at your strands of hair and laugh, but your hands shall evermore grip tightly, one pull at a time, until you can finally break free from the stereotype and love yourself. Stand strong and close the mouth of karma, or look back to admire how far you've climbed. When you're finally free from the quicksand, admire how powerful the swirls and colors are. Notice how it never stops for anyone, how it creates beauty on earth. Begin to fall in love with your prisoner. Karma is a river goddess dressed in yellow, cold in her nature, impassive to the dodge of culture and wisdom. And a sense of eclipse surrounds me with music, under the guise of being friendly. Wide awake, my body cracks its sorries, while the tortured sea salt hugged me. The rocks I warned to the sea. Tell me your secrets on how you swim. The river, she coddles the minds of children, turns them slowly into the hands of corrupted majesties, leaves them with sinking desires of a fair world. The kids, whose hands have not touched the elm of identity, whose only viewpoint of life is through the lens of guns blasting. Close your ears, children. Try to escape the grasp of karma.
So, what are some examples? Like either things that you've done or goals that you have that you want to do? What do you see when you want to mix poetry and all these other art forms?
Yeah, okay. I can. My earliest one is when I worked with a dancer named Tatum Wildman. They were the choreographer for Macbeth, and also they work with Dance of Saskatchewan. And so they are a contemporary dancer. Now, they heard of me and came up to me and said that I want to do this show. Would you like if you looked at these dances, people coming in and doing dances for you, and write a poem to that? Write a poem of how it was feeling. So now this was different because it wasn't just the dancer coming and taking my poem. Now I'm looking at that dance and writing something of how it makes me feel. And so that was an amazing experience. I would come to rehearsals and I'll sit in my corner with my glasses and my hat, and I'll just be typing on the laptop while they're doing rehearsals. And that was like my first instance, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And we performed it on the Shakespeare of Saskatchewan stage. The second one is when I saw the dances and I was like, I actually like that. So I now started doing workshops with like how to do contemporary dance. And just recently, the Back Alley Antics, which is run by Free Flow Dance in Saskatoon, they do this thing where they put artists in back alleys, and then they do a tour around the alleys in downtown. So I did a movement dance. I don't call it lyrical dance, even though they call it lyrical dance, but to my voice overhead and me dancing to that voice. So now I have taken elements from both of those experiences, those very different experiences, and tried to use them together. That was dance. Then theater. Theater is more like taking all of the words that I've used and making a play out of them. So those are like instances where I have tried to, what I've learned from both of them, and bring it into my own elements in my own style.
Wow. Okay, so these are all things that like inspire your art, that help you to become a better poet. What is your writing kryptonite?
My writing kryptonite is pressure.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it is pressure and it is time limits. Just because of my poems visits me a lot, it is very apparent that when I have to sit down, it just feels like air. When I have no direction, it feels like air. That's why I try so hard. When they say write all the time, yeah, it's actually a good advice. Like it sounds corny, oh, write and practice. But by writing, even if you don't like the poem, you can at least shelve it for something else. And then you can come back to it later. That's what I love to do with all of my poems. Even if I don't like a line, I will always shelve it to do something later. So when pressure of having all of this years and years of experience and people giving me bigger and bigger projects, it's like a lot. And I have to like sit down and try to swift through all of the thoughts and then get to that middle ground where I have an idea, I have a moral, I have a advice, and I want to say it. Rather than trying to cater to what other people want in it, I have to cater to what job will fulfill the poems that I have or the poems that I want to share, you know? So that has been ways that I've been trying to cope with that kryptonite. It's been a tricky process. I mean, COVID really it really got into a lot of things, you know. But it has also taught me that sometimes you have to think for yourself when you're a poet, mostly when you're a community poet, like someone that works with other companies, that sometimes what you have is what is needed rather than trying to create something new for corporations. You know, sometimes you don't need poems that are like Saskatoon good. Sometimes you need poems that Saskatoon filled with diversity, you know, and that my style of poetry, though it might not work for all the jobs, it works for certain jobs, and those certain jobs are very important rather than trying to cater for everything and trying to fill in those demands of those pressure. But it's something I'm trying to learn. I say it now like if, oh, I have figured it out, but I'm figuring it out as I'm going, and I'm trying. This poem is called Uma. Uma, my mother, Uma, I'm still here. I was born with no name. They said I was a slave with no master, and I believed them. The moment my road ended was when I was born, because living one more minute takes me closer to a race I am not winning, privilege, definition, and immunity to advantages that were supposed to be given to me at birth, slavery, definition, 5 generations of running. It was surviving under village fire, and karma is clapping for her kill fodder. If we are slaves with no master, then we have no fate. Bow to the old master in the house, they said, bent over cotton fields. Kisses from the sun almost feel like abuse. Pruned up backs, the cousins of raisins, raising up your kids to sell them to the big man. Hand clenching handle on the bed, rocking sensation, sexual sensation, sensations your daughter only knows because you sold her for grains of rice. Give way to the master, jolly old fool. Daddy and I never liked the smell of cotton. Never liked the loneliness of not seeing another human for a mile. Only feeling the whip scar our skin like prunes we run. Down 3 sections of land we run. 5 generations of pain. 6 bags to fill with things that would never come back to us. That jolly old man taught us crumpets was real. He slept in the mansion next to our dirt aunt. We thought white folks were lizards with blood painted blue and gold. They looked beautiful, like they came out of fable stories. So we invited them in. My existence is the result of our mistake. Uma, where are you? I'm here. I remember when Mama told me that fire was real. She told me pillows were imaginary, and shivering myself to sleep was not my right as a human. I was 10 when I realized that I would look beautiful underneath these bruises. They tried to take my house, leave me to grow darker under slavery's sun. They took us away to eat salt and burn our stomach into ashes. Crying out for God seems unneeded when you can feel His pressure on your back. Listen to why my skin has unnoticed mirth marks and my back arcs at the stare of strangers. Listen to why my skin is bare with no tribal marks. I fled from a family once owned by settlers, white missionaries preaching chastity and marriage, giving the daughters blessings of their love. 5 generations ago, my family ran away from settlers. Now I am living in a country ruled by them. The moment my road ended was when I was born, and the day I figured out why.
That's amazing. We have time for one more question. And so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to either share like a final thought or a message or something that you really want to say. You can say it right now. Yeah.
I found that I've only been working right now in Saskatoon. But now that the experience is getting more and more, I've been working with different cities and just going back and forth with each city. And one thing that I am trying to do is not relive my past. And I feel like that's an advice I should give to young artists. Mostly nowadays, art is becoming so prominent and there's always work if you try to find and you try to ask. Oh my gosh, ask. Even if it feels like, oh, they will never want me, ask. You never know when they're like, oh, this is exactly what we needed, you know? And so with that comes with learning that even before COVID, life was different than it is now, and not always trying to relive that time, always trying to move forward. I've been trying very hard that I do not become comfortable in the spot that I am in with my poetry, trying to take what I have learned and move it forward, to push it forward, rather than trying to relive that moment, because I'm a different person now than I was back then. So yeah, that's a bit of advice just for people that are finding that my style of poetry is not the same. Why is it not the same anymore? It's because you've changed. It's because you're a different person right now, and that's okay. And sometimes you need to realize that life is catering to you. You're not catering to the world. it might sound narcissistic, but sometimes your world is yours, and other people are going to have their world too. We're all just living in our own bubbles and interacting with that bubble. And it's okay to feel like that. It's okay to want to cater to your own demands too. It's really important that you do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Peace. This was really just incredible.
Thank you.
This has been Prairie People's Poetry with me, Cat Abenstein, as your host. Thanks to Peace Akintade for their work, and thanks to you for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and check out the other videos in our series. And be sure to let us know what you think. Thanks for supporting Prairie Poetry.